Students, welcome back to this class. In this class, we are going to discuss about early church and its connection and its relationship with society and the culture. See, society, culture, and church are part and parcel in one way because this will help us to understand early church better. This is one of the important lessons for us to understand because in the last few classes we did pay our attention to understand various backgrounds like cultural background, historical background, religious background, political background, and so on and so forth. And we did understand all these backgrounds did help Christianity to flourish, not to perish. There were a lot of pains. In spite of all this, we did understand that the early church did grow. So this background or these backgrounds did really help Christianity to go in a different levels. But in the midst of all this positive note, there are also some important notes that we need to identify because this is to do with society and the culture. Society and culture are part and parcel because you cannot deal the society without understanding the culture. And you cannot understand any religion without understanding the culture of that particular religion. So we need to have this bridge. And this bridge is so important for us to identify. So this morning, may I explain the class in a better way with regard to the culture, society, and the church. Well, to begin with, I have some slides for the class, and I would like to share those slides with you this morning so that we may have the better understanding about what do you mean by society, what do you mean by culture, what do you mean by church. And after having stand up the particular thing, we also will pay attention to have the connection between these elements and to the church. Okay, let's move on to some of the slides. We do have the society and the culture and its relationship to the early church. Now the question comes here is, what do you mean by society and what do you mean by culture? What do you mean by church? Okay, I have a small definition for you to understand this particular thing. Okay, may I show you? Society. Okay, a human society is a group of people related each other through constant relationship or a large social group sharing the same geographical or social territory subject to some political authority and the dominant cultural expectations. Friends, this morning, for us to identify one particular thing is all about relationship, all about the social group sharing a geographical and social territory with some political authority. To put it in a nutshell, with one cultural expectation, with one political authority, and with one kind of a relationship, which is known to be a persistent relationship, makes society to be vibrant. Okay. Now the second question is, what do you mean by a culture? Before I do so, a second important thing of human society is all about characteristic relationship, which I mentioned already about the culture and institutions. Okay. Now the culture is all about the character. Culture is a character of a particular group of people defined by everything from language, religion, social habits, music, and arts, etc. Right? So you have this particular thing, which means like it's defined with the language, with the religion, the social habits, and the music and arts. Okay. So what do you mean by culture? Culture is a group of people with one particular culture, looks forward to have one language, one religion, social habits, music, arts, and so on and so forth. All joined together, we call as a culture. Okay. Now, when we talk about this early church, the other important thing is all about slavery. See, we are going to look at a lot of issues. For example, I'm going to teach in this particular class about slavery. When I teach in the next class, I will be teaching about Roman law and Roman citizenship. See, the question here is how early church was growing in the midst of a lot of social different activities. For example, slavery. For example, gladiatorial games that the Roman government has. For example, sexual immorality. So many things we are going to discuss about. See, to begin with, the first understanding is about slavery. A slave's life was very hard. Slaves were usually prisoners, captured in war, but some were people who had been kidnapped in Italy. That was a Rome context. See, the previous classes I did mention about the Rome's significance. The Rome government was very strong in order to see that slavery is order of the day. Slaves are needful and wanted for the people in order that they may have a very sophisticated life, in order they may have a very uh, matured or cultured or elevated, exalted, comfortable lifestyle. Okay, so they need to have this. Okay, now the second important thing that you have the slaves were sold at a slave market. Slaves were sold at the slave market. You can understand this. Um, Slaves were sold at the market. They were put on the show naked with a notice around the necks. Anyone who had enough money could buy them. Once sold, they are the property of the new owner and had to work for no money. Sometimes a rich man would have as many as 400 slaves. Imagine they have 400 slaves. Not that easy. Not to just think about slaves in that way. So no money, you cannot claim anything. You have to work. So the Rome government allowed this, and the rich people did have 400 slaves. Imagine that was a scenario in which Christianity is moving into Rome soil. Okay, let me highlight some more thing. Some slaves owner, you know, beat their slaves, and slaves that ran away could be killed. And slaves could not argue with their masters. They had to do exactly what they are told, or else they would be punished. If a slave killed his master, then all the slaves in the household would be killed. So you can look at the scenario in which the Rome was taking into the consideration the slaves. Okay, the next important thing is like slaves. Both men and women were sold as slaves, as young boys were the most expensive slaves to buy. Some slaves were well educated, especially those from Greece. They would be used to teach the children of the house. Though they are slaves, yet they will be used to teach the children, meaning they have no right for it, but they give their work, make them to teach the children, their own children. See, we give education to our children having some teachers, some home's tuition or some tuition that we send. And whoever teaches our children, we pay them. But here, the scenario is completely different. The slaves will not be paid any amount. Rather, they would be penalized if they're not able to function in a way that they're supposed to function. If that children are not educated, if children are finding difficult in understanding the subject, then children will not be penalized, rather slave will be penalized. See, women slave would be used as hairdressers, dressmakers, cooks, and servants for rich women. Other slaves worked in a small workshop making leather or silver goods or pots and pans. So the life was so miserable. See, the slavery was an order of day. The Rome would like to see on the markets that the slaves are being sold out, right? The slaves who had the hardest lives were those who were put to work in the mines. They had to spend long hours underground in the hard, cramped condition. See, some slaves are pure penalized too much. They were being put into mines for hours, the 10 hours or 12 hours. They have to be there and underground in a hard, cramped condition. There is no other way. Okay, and the mines were also unsafe. Often slaves were killed in accidents. Farmers used slaves to the hardest work on the farms like digging and stuff. So what is something that we are understanding? So this without slave, the Rome was not in a position to function. Rome was not able to move on and on. The Rome was understanding the fact that they were moving towards the bigger direction. Therefore, this morning is a great joy for us to understand the fact that we are moving to it. So, the slavery is one of the important things that we understand. The mines were unsafe place for them, and the slaves were killed, and the farmers used the slaves to do the hardest work in the farms, like digging and slaughtering. Okay, some slaves were called public slaves. They worked for the Rome. The job was to build roads and other buildings to repair the aqueducts that supplied Rome with the fresh water. See, other public slaves worked as a clerk and tax collector society. See, the important things for us to identify, the slaves were finding very, very difficult time, hard time. See, very, very hard time. So you can look at the some of the ways in which they are entering into. So there were four categories. There were four categories. One is slaves. Another one is called agricultural slaves. Another one is called domestic slaves. Another one is called industrial slaves. So the four important areas in which the slavery was moving on. So we need to identify these four areas like temple slaves, agricultural slaves, and domestic slaves and industrial slaves. Okay, okay. Keep moving on that. One of the important things for us to understand about the scripture. See, the most famous is a runaway slave of Philemon, who is known by the common name for a slave, Onesimus. See that Christianity gave instruction for the existing social structure. See the Philippians chapter 5 verse 9, Colossians chapter 3 verse 22, and First Peter chapter 3 verse 18. You can understand about the significance of the slavery and so on, but directed attention to higher concerns, higher concerns. So the friends, we have to look at the first important thing is all about uh, the slavery, which was very strong, which was very strong. So may I also highlight the second important thing for the class is all about Roman citizenship. See, the Rome, through the experience of allegiance in Italy, gradually discovered the notion dual citizenship and applied in the providences of the overseas empire. Okay, so the Roman, through their experience of allegiance in Italy, gradually discovered the notion dual citizenship. Okay, now with the citizenship, they have a kind of a liberty. See, an indefinitely expansible concept of citizen became an instrument of promoting the loyalty of Rome and the sign of unification of the empire within one system of law. Okay, one system of law. See, the Paul was a citizen of Tarsus in Acts chapter 21, verse 39, and the citizen of the Rome, Acts chapter 22, verse 26 to 37. So you can identify the citizenship, like Paul was citizenship of Tarsus and citizen of the Rome. That citizenship really helped him to understand the matter of the fact that he is moving towards the destiny. Okay, the Roman law. Next one is called Roman law. Roman provincial governor held the power to command, so which gave them almost unlimited power of life and death over provinces. See, restricted only by the law against extortion and terrorism. See, now we need to understand about the Roman provincial governor. Okay, number one is a power to command. Power to command. Number two is only the holder of imperium like could impose the death sentence, and the governor could not delegate his power. See, only holder of this power to command, this Roman provincial government held the power, and he could propose the death sentence, and the governor could only delegate his power. Therefore, you can look at the John chapter 18 verse 21. You will understand the whole scenario, how this is actually implied in the Roman context. The governor was accountable only to the Senate and the emperor. The next one is called the administration of justice was highly personal, and the case heard wherever the governor was. So you need to understand the other side of the coin. We have the Roman law, and we have the Roman citizenship, and how the Roman law was so powerful, and Roman citizenship was so powerful in terms of this. Okay, this is going to be the last slide of this particular video session, and after which I will teach you the new areas like a social lifestyle, like a social immortality, and so on. Okay, the Roman law, we also do have the adoption. Adoption. See, you can understand one practice recognized by Roman law, and Roman law and common in Roman society was used by Paul to express an important theological principle. Important theological principle called adoption. Important theological principles. Okay, it's called adoption. If you look at Galatians chapter 4 verse 5, and Romans chapter 8, and Ephesians chapter 1, we understand about the spirit of adoption. He has given us not the fear, the spirit of fear, but rather he has given us a spirit of adoption. So which is very important for us to identify. The person adopted at any age was taken out of his precious condition. Okay, all our debt were cancelled, and he started the new life of sonship. See, no longer we are slaves, but we are sons and daughters in the kingdom of God. The new family, those inherited, he was entitled. See, adoption was a legal act, attested by the witness. Adoption is a legal act adopted by the witness. Okay, so it was like in the Roman government, it was like in a legal act. So once a slave is being adopted, slave is being purchased, slave is being bought. Now what happens is something very different takes place. What happens? The owner has the all potential, the owner has the all power. And the last one, which I want to show you, is the early church and society, about the gladiatorial games, gladiatorial issues, which the Rome government did have. This was one of the practices of the Rome, which will be discussed in the next class. I will be teaching about the gladiators in the Rome government. Okay, so we will be connecting very soon in the next class. Then I will be teaching about the gladiatorial issues which the Rome society has. So end of this class, we discussed about three important things. One is about slavery, the other thing is about Roman law, other thing is about Roman citizenship. Okay, with this thought, may I wind up the class today with this video session, and the second video session will be beginning soon with the new thoughts, very particularly starting from the gladiatorial issues. Thank you.